to another episode of Word Up with Dani Katz. I'm here with Garz Chan, a most magical woman. She is a teacher. She helps people clear parallel lives in parallel dimensions. And I had the pleasure of meeting Garz at a dinner party, and I was completely fascinated. I was like doing my best to not like give you all the attention or ask too many questions, but I don't even know if I did a good job because I think I grilled you then. And I've just been so excited to dive in and talk to you, glean from your giant, expansive perspective what's going on in the world and your take on things. So hi, Garz, how are you?
Hello, Dani. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thanks for saying yes. All right, so would you catch our audience up to speed on what you do, how you're working with people, how your genius expresses?
So basically, I clear past life traumas and karmas, or I clear traumas and karmas from lifetimes, multiple lifetimes that affect this lifetime. Whatever is unresolved from other lifetimes will show up in this lifetime, just like lessons don't go away unless we resolve them or learn them. So I also teach workshops, and I teach how to neutralize phobias. I teach psychic development. I teach Akashic records. I teach opening the chakras and reading auras and how to meet with your spirit guides, your animal totems, your gatekeepers, your starseed family. I teach quantum jumping and energy healing, integrated energy therapy. I teach people how to connect with their, did I say starseed family? Light language, speak light language. And clear karma, clear past life issues, astral projection, psychic surgery, yeah, all kinds of stuff.
One-stop mystical skill set shop.
Yeah.
How did you tap into these abilities? Were you always open to these realms as a child? Is it something you've cultivated?
Yeah, well, when I was a child, I still am highly sensitive and very empathic. So I've always been able to feel energy and feel spirit activities around me. But it wasn't something that my family ever talked about. And my family, they worked 7 days a week, 7 nights a week. They didn't really communicate with each other. So I learned to read energy because my family were not very verbally communicative. But it wasn't until my son was born, which was 15 years ago, did I actually start developing, psychic mediumship and energy healing and all the other intuitive gifts or talents or whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
And was there something in the childbirth process that opened up a portal? Like, what was it about that was the catalyst?
Well, my son got sick. He had 7 colds back to back, back to back, back to back. So I found a healer who worked on him, but the healer didn't work on him. The healer worked on me and my ex-husband, who was my husband at the time, for 20 minutes on the phone. And the next day my son was well and stayed well. And so I went and saw him, and he convinced me to take his workshop, and I had no interest in taking his workshop. The other thing is my son, he was seeing spirits and he was talking to them. And I realized if I want to empower him, then I need to develop as a psychic medium so that I can teach him how to have boundaries with the spirit realm, because I never did. Yeah. And teach him to not be scared of spirits, because I grew up being terrified of the spirit realm, and and I had no one to talk to about it.
Right.
So it was, my son pretty much put me on my, connected me to my purpose.
I love that. I don't know you that well, and I'm excited to know you better. And I do track you on Instagram, of course. And I think there's something particularly striking about your relationship to your son. It's palpable. How you care, how you honor him, how you respect him. And one of the things that inspired me to reach out was I know that you're exceptionally neutral and always taking a very high level. And I saw you once speak to how boys were being treated in our culture. And that was where I was like, I really want to talk to Garz about this. So I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit about what's going on in our culture in terms of how boys and men are being treated and your perspective as a mother of a young man.
Wow. Yeah, there is so much going on. There are so many agendas. There's so many layers. There's so much conditioning and well, you know, I truly believe that every generation has their karma. Every generation has their theme. Every generation has their core wounds. You know, I'm from Gen X, right? So we were raised to be power through things, work really hard, do not speak to your elders, don't answer back, toughen up. We were abused physically, and that was normal. And we worked as young children, that was normal. And we were very private. There was a lot of shame, and the sexual abuse, we never talked about that, or we were blamed. It was our fault. Children were still, like, you know, seen but not really heard. But also our generation are naturally very rebellious because we were supposed to be, you know, the Indigo children, Starseed children, Indigos came in through the 70s mostly to rock the status quo, right? So a lot of us were, my friend called it I was about to say Lakshmi, but that's not Lakshmi.
Oh, latchkey.
Latchkey, sorry. Again, so you can edit it.
This is why I have, you can't see it, but I've Lakshmi on my mug right now. And I chose it specifically for this conversation with you. She came up somehow.
Okay. Let me say that again. So my friend calls it
Latchkey.
Latchkey. Okay. My friend calls it latchkey, right? Kids, like, we were raised, you know, without phones and internet and all that kind of stuff, and went out all day, stayed out all night. But then you have the millennials, and the whole Me Too movement, you know, came about because the millennials are so transparent, right? We're not transparent. We kept a lot of secrets, a lot of shame. We're very private. We had journals. We didn't want anyone reading our journals. It was a violation if you read our diaries, our journals. But the millennials, they're very transparent. They want to share everything on social media, right? Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, all that kind of stuff. Lots of selfies, lots of discussions about things. They want to talk about their feelings. They want to talk about the abuse. Then the whole Me Too movement comes. And then, you know, then we also have my son, who is Gen Z, right? And what I consider the crystal baby, the crystal child. And a lot of crystal babies are born to Indigo parents, because the Indigo parents are supposed to come in and destroy all the structures that do not serve humanity, so that the crystal babies can come in and just love. They just love. They're just here to, like, raise the vibrations, right, of the planet. And they do require a very different parenting style. They are entitled, but I think they're entitled in a really good way. They're going, you know what? You accepted a lot of abuse. That's not me. You tolerated a lot of disrespect. That's not going to be me. Right? So it's very challenging for those of us who were raised feeling like, you know, verbal abuse, mental abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse was just regular and it was normal, right? It's very challenging for us because the Gen Z, the crystal babies, some of them, not all of them, they will not tolerate what we tolerated. Mm-hmm. And my son has said to me in the past, I feel bad for you because you and your generation have really low standards, right? Mm-hmm. He sees the trauma. Mm-hmm. And the good thing is that because people in my generation experience so much abuse, we know what it's like to be raised by unconscious parents. Mm-hmm. And the gift is we become conscious parents because of it, right? Now, there are some people out there who are still trying to raise their Gen Z kids like they're Gen X, and it's like, it's not working, mm-hmm. you know? They're a completely different generation and they have different needs, mm-hmm. right? My son's friends are all bisexual, gender fluid, asexual, transgender, gay, you know, very, very fluid. They're not going to have the same conversations and challenges that we had. Like, we grew up with the toxic masculinity and the toxic femininity, you know, and I feel like, oh, they'll have their issues, but it's not going to be the same as ours. And I feel like what's really important to me is to raise him to be who he came here to be, mm-hmm. right? Not to be who I want him to be, mm-hmm. which is what a lot of my parents, their generation did. Mm-hmm. You're going to behave the way we want you to behave. You're going to believe what we want you to believe. You're going to do the work that we want you to do. We believe that this is successful. You need to go for that. We want you to date these people. You're going to date these people. We want you to marry this person, right? Yeah. So our parents, they were like dictators, but I feel like we've swung the other way because of it, because we see that it's unhealthy. Mm-hmm. It's unhealthy, it's destructive. A lot of people, you know, are depressed, unhappy. So obviously it's not effective, right? For me, I remember when I was pregnant, so many people said to me, the most important thing is to control your child. Yes. Yeah, when you're pregnant for the first time, you get a lot of unsolicited advice.
Right.
And if I had a penny for every time someone said, the most important thing for you as a parent is to control your child, I'd be rich. Well, I am rich, but I mean, I'd be like...
And was that advice coming through a certain like generational fractal or cultural fractal, or is it everyone?
I will say it was mainly people of color.
Okay.
And older.
Okay.
So older than me.
Yeah.
Yeah. They were all about controlling your child, control your child. Yeah. And I was, at times I was offended, but I didn't say anything because I realized that's your generation. That's your shit.
Right.
That's not going to be how I raise my child.
Right.
It's not about controlling my child,
mm-hmm.
you know? And also that generation comes from a place of like, you know, I'm the parent, you listen to me, you're younger, I'm older, I know more.
Right.
But I feel like my son came into this life to be my master teacher. Mm. He is the one who has taught me how to raise him. He teaches me how to love him. He teaches me what is fair, what is unfair, what is acceptable, what is not acceptable. He teaches me that. Mm-hmm. And I believe if everyone honored their child that way, mm-hmm. right, saw their child as they're not your boss, you know, he's not the boss of me, he's not the head of the household, but he is a master teacher of mine. Mm-hmm. They come and they make you confront all the things that you haven't healed. Mm-hmm. you know?
Yeah.
And they're master teachers. That's all I can say. They're master teachers,
Mhm.
you know?
I have a couple questions. As like just fundamentally, crystal, indigo, starseed, where are these coming from? Like, is it a star system? Is it a planet? Is it an agreement?
Yeah. Well, as you know, Earth is not the only planet in the solar system. There
Right.
are infinite amounts of planets and solar systems. And starseed just means that your soul has originated from a different planet in a different galaxy. And indigos is just a name of one starseed. Crystals is a name for another.
Are all crystals from the same planet? Are all indigos from the same planet?
Not necessarily,
Mhm.
because some planets are hybrids and some starseeds will travel. Some starseeds have been enslaved, right? So they don't always come from the same planet.
Mhm.
There are hundreds of thousands, if not, millions of different starseed races
Mhm.
that we probably won't ever know about,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah.
But I would say the most common ones that people tend to know is indigos, crystals, the rainbow babies that have been coming through, Palladians, Arcturians, Orions, Syrians, yeah, Lemurians.
Mhm. And when you say you're witnessing with your son and his friends, this sort of like trans, queer, gender fluidity, is that organic? Is that engineered? Like, why is this emerging, and how is this emerging in our species now?
That's a really interesting question, right? I feel like 50% of it is organic, and I feel like 50, not exactly, but I feel like it's 50-50. Some of it is engineered and some of it is organic.
Mhm.
Why is it happening now? Because I feel like every generation, like I said, has its themes. So it's almost like we've been split into different groups, and it's like, okay, this group, you're gonna handle this topic, or you're gonna pick apart this problem and you're gonna solve this problem. This group here, you're gonna solve this problem. This group, you're gonna solve this problem. Now, some problems, they roll over,
Mhm.
right? And every generation gets to tackle the problem from their perspective. But I feel like certain generations get to look at or examine very specific problems or issues that are almost like specifically catered to that generation.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
So one thing that I've noticed, I started teaching homeschool high schoolers last year, was this sort of self-imposed shame. And one of my students, he was 13, and I had them, they're writing about languaging and how they're, I asked them to write about a time that they were otherized. And this 13-year-old boy wrote about being invited to a party and then being uninvited because of, certain medical things, and how that really hurt his feelings. But he knew that he didn't have a right to complain because he was a privileged white boy. And it really broke my heart to see him, preemptively denying his own authentic emotional pain for fear of some other thing. So I'm just curious to know, like, are you seeing that in this generation, and what do we do about that?
Yes, but I see in every race though. Every race feels ashamed. There are people almost in every country that feel ashamed about their country or their leaders, right? I don't think it's I don't think it's just, Caucasian people who are feeling the shame.
Right.
Um, there is a lot of shame also that boys and girls feel about being boys and girls.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of shame that men feel and women feel about being men and women,
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't matter what color, what your background is, what country you're from, what sex you are, or even non-gender. I think everyone is used to feeling some kind of shame.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't feel shame, they wonder what's wrong with me,
Mm-hmm.
right? How comes I don't feel shame? And if they don't feel shame, they feel guilt for not feeling shame.
Right. And are these qualities that are helping us? Like in my mind, these are the qualities and emotions that you're clearing from people's lifetimes. It seems weird that it's become kind of like a trend or a sport to just like feel super ashamed of ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I was not raised in a religious household. But from what I understand from working on a lot of people who were raised in religious households, is that shame is part of their daily makeup.
Mm-hmm.
So unfortunately, most people were not raised with unconditional love.
Mm-hmm.
Most people were not raised by conscious parents and families. And so a lot of people have been raised in environments where there's a lot of shame and blame and projection and passing down traumas,
Mm-hmm.
which all is laced with shame,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the shame is blowing up right now because the whole world is experiencing shadow work,
Mm-hmm.
right? The whole pandemic that came, the lockdown, that created a huge opportunity for all of us, the collective conscious, subconscious, unconscious, to experience shadow work. Some people did it, some people didn't. So.
Okay, that's a great transition, because it does seem like we've been presented with this initiatory task. Here's some shadow work. I'm curious to know, like, how many of us are doing it? Is it, from your perspective, is it enough to shift us out of, a prison planet enslavement construct? Like, are we meeting the task?
I'd say about 30% of us. 30% of the world's population is maybe awakening or have been awakening, or they're doing the shadow work, right? Yeah.
That's more than I thought.
Oh, well, that's good.
Yeah, that's great.
Not everyone came here to awaken. Not everyone came here to, be woke. Not everyone came here to be activated, and, we get to respect that too.
I completely get that. I think what's frustrating is when certain people are in charge of the Earthship who I don't feel like should be in those positions. The fact that we are still sharing a planet and the stakes happen to be really high right now. Like, how do we rectify that? Because everyone's where they're at, honestly, and yet the stakes are really high. So those of us with eyes to see, like, what's the smartest, like, psycho-emotional stance to take on this without driving ourselves crazy or becoming despondent or slitting our wrists?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, I'm sure you've noticed a lot of people have been motivated to get into politics, right? Because they don't want to just stand by, lay down and take it.
Yeah.
So it's what is created a lot of activists, right? A lot of young activists. So it has brought about a very politically savvy young generation who are determined to change the course of that ship. And I believe that they will.
That's encouraging.
Yeah.